Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. Good morning, if it's morning where you are. My name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author, and you're on my channel, so welcome to Booktube, where we rebel by reading instead. Yes, that's right. It is a Wednesday, and so that means every other Wednesday I do a wrap-up of my reads. And I got 5 on the docket today to share with you my reviews of. Now, I raced to finish the 5th one. I committed to putting it on the thumbnail last night, and I was like, I'm going to get through this last 100 pages of an academic tome, and I think it suffered a little. So, apologies if the time spent finishing that 5th book bleeds into a little degradation of quality of review because I didn't have time to put together notes about these books. One of them I've already decided to do a standalone book review as a Climathon book because I think it's really good for that. But we'll get down to the brass tacks in just a minute. So that is the purpose today. Every other Wednesday I do book wrap-ups. Every Sunday you'll see me stream at 10 a.m. Pacific, and I have different topics, usually about readathons, book tags, a little bit about my author life, and Truth and Reconciliation Committee, all that jazz this year for 2025. And the timely thing to comment on today is it's the end of February. So I remember that when I was looking for unique holidays, there's this old ancient holiday called Terminalia, where you celebrate borders and friends and liminal spaces. And I thought that was cool. So I had a couple neighborhood gatherings a long time ago. And I don't really do anything for it, but it's still an interesting concept to me. So the reason they had this Terminalia celebration, which is the ending of things, is that it was the ending of the Roman year. And so March 1st, Mars, the god of war, was the first month for them. So as we start March, it's the Roman New Year, in case you didn't know that. So I just thought I'd give you guys a question of the day that is asking, what's new in March? What's something new that will happen in March? Or what are you excited about doing in a different way in March? Let me know for your question of the day. And then let me remind you my upcoming events. So I've got notes for that at least. So today is the wrap up. Tomorrow I am invited as a guest on Elaine's channel. So Elaine is in the chat. I don't have a link for the stream yet, but I do have a link for Elaine's page. So I'll pop that into the chat. And we're just going to be talking about books and my books in general, reading, writing, authoring, etc. Elaine's channel is called Cobalt Dragon, and she is a booktuber, often into fantasy stories, but also has just great book chats on her channel. I dropped into one with a couple of mutual friends yesterday. Was it only yesterday? And they tend to go long, so bring snacks is what I will say. And then, so that's Thursday. Friday, I have final Friday for February. Say that 3 times fast. So we'll have a productivity stream in the morning. And then Sunday, I'm back to my bullshit. So yeah, that's the upcoming events for the next few days, if you want to put any of those on your calendar. And then I'll just say hello to the chat before we dive into the books. Eva was here early to say hello, and Eva had some cool updates. So maybe there's something new for March that Eva can put links for in the chat. I just saw something related to a new book, perhaps. So I hope that's going well. And then Elaine was here to say hi. Is the afternoon where she is in Canada? Excellent. Jim's Books, Reading, and Stuff. Hello. 1st of March is St. David's Day, which is the Welsh National Day. I like that too. I usually am inclined more towards the January 25th holiday being a Scotophile. But you know what? 1st of March being the Welsh National Day rolls right into one of my upcoming readathons, which is Celtophile, which is I have joined in at the very last minute to be a co-host along with Elaine and David and Nicole, the premiere host. So we're doing Celtophile reads for March, and Welsh would fit right in. I do have Welsh materials. I got this old chestnut, the Mabinogion, that I have not read, but I have a whole cabinet of curiosities here of Celtophile reads, and I think I'm going to introduce like my own little bonus prompt for when people log in for my Celtophile readathon videos, which would be fun. Eva's answer to the question of the day: I'm celebrating the new year this March and with spring from here on out. Yes, the winter months just aren't a great start for me. Yeah, that totally makes sense, especially with recent events. I have a young reader book releasing. That's new. A pen name debut. Woohoo! Can I say the pen name? I mean, it's on your socials, so I will not be revealing anything. So that is the link for Elaine's channel tomorrow. And Elaine, if you could remind us all of the time, that would be great. I didn't write that down in my notes. Elaine says, reading more in March, reading not so great. Oh no, reading slump, be gone. Yeah, all right. Well, I hope that's a new trend for you. Thanks, Margaret. I send the link morning of so people don't lose it. That's a strategy, probably adapted to a lot of people's schedules. Yeah. Oh, cool. I'm facilitating new people meeting each other. No links just yet, but thank you. Waiting for Ingram's review and all that. Gotcha. Cool, cool. Thanks for the kind words. I read plenty of different genres. Yes, lol, snacks and beverages. Good idea for the life. Especially if you're observing. Sometimes I bring snacks even when I'm a participant because, you got to hydrate. But yeah. Let's see. Yes, I was the last on the list. And my comment was, hey, 4 is a good number. It's like a 4-leaf clover for the Celtophiles. Yes. Yay. Okay, so the pen name is Tyla Kane. Tyla like Tyra Banks, but with an L, and Kane like the recent vice presidential candidate, Tim Kaine. I don't know. I don't know how you came up with it, but those are the things that I associate with those names, Ava. So apologies if any of those are bad associations for you. My inner child loves the pen name things, not gonna lie. That's cool. That's cool. I like it. Okay, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard. Yes, because we're still in Standard for another week. Yes, that is noon for me. Perfect. Eva says the time change is coming up, so I give up on knowing more than my own. Yes, the time change for the US, at least in my state, is March 9th. I don't know what it is for Canada, but I basically change and then start looking the week before and the week after what the dates are for other countries. So, yay. Not planning on just an hour for the live tomorrow. No. I might bring pillows and blankets as well. Gotta set up for the long haul. Gotta have my oh, good people. I'm sure it'll be really fun. I'm looking forward to it. Let's see. So, book 1. I'm gonna go in order of. Hold on. I'm secreting. I'm gonna go in order of which books I read first. So, which books I completed first. So, look at this beauty. Samantha Shannon's latest is The Dark Mirror, and it either just came out or is going to come out. It's the 5th in the Bone Season series, and I had not read any of this fantasy series before. I had read Samantha Shannon before. Some of you will remember she is the author of Priory of the Orange Tree, which had a big éclat when it came out for years after. So this is her newer series. I will say I started with the 5th book because I didn't have the others to start. And while there was a lot that came before that I may have spoiled for myself, I'm fine with that because this series is very spy-centered, very who can you trust, who's going to betray you, very networked and like action, lots of violence, although it's, American violence. It's the sort we're used to. And lots of very clever things and very cool magic. So I enjoyed the magic system. I enjoyed the world building. It was very clearly done, even for the 5th book in the series. And I'm excited to talk to the author, fingers crossed. It's been a little harder to connect with the publishing folks, but hopefully we'll see Samantha Shannon on the channel and it'll be really fun in March. So The Dark Mare, very good, very fast paced. The magic system is about thinking so there's different powers they have basically, and I don't know if this is spoilery for the first in the series. I don't think so, but I'll put up a mini spoiler section banner just in case you want to shut your ears. So basically it's the earth that we have, but like 50 years in the future, and this alien race came down and they look a lot like humans, but not really. Like you can tell there's a difference, but you don't know what. And they have different powers. And so they were here for 200 years. They've been silent. They've been like split into factions. And some of them want to like enslave humans, and some of them want to work with us because they need us for sustenance. And so various factions of humanity have either been blissfully ignorant because they haven't been colonized yet, or have tried to fight back, or have been in league. And so we're sort of going into one hero of the resistance and her journey, like several years in, and after she's learned a lot and forged alliances, and we're in the middle of a romance. So that was a fun part. And yeah, so there's a little bit of like echoes of vampires and a lot of like thought, like casting yourself into someone's mind. So it's just really cool magical system and really like well structured, well paced, exciting action. So if you're a Samantha Shannon fan, I assume you will like this one too. So yeah, and I loved the pretty cover that they sent to me, which is really nice of them. So yeah, so that's the fantasy. Urban fantasy? Yes. And what's really cool, I thought at the beginning when I was sort of still finding my feet on like the world, was that they start out in Eastern Europe, and then let's see, they start out in some Eastern European country. Not it is Poland. It is Poland if Monique joins in. And then they go to another like Balkan country, and then they get their way down to Venice. And so like all these different um settings are really shown, and because the main character hasn't seen them before, we see them with like the appreciation of someone who's lived under a rock of oppression their whole lives, and they're like, wow, this is so pretty. So I liked being a little tourist in that urban fantastical world. That was nice. So that's book one. Book two is and so yeah, I don't have a date for the interview with the author yet. Hopefully that materializes. I do have a date for this next one because it's in the past. Recently, I don't know if you caught it, but if you did not, I'll drop the link in the chat. I hosted Olivia Wolfgang-Smith, who is the author of Mutual Interest. And as you can tell by the cover, this is definitely my kind of book. So if you don't recognize this building, it's the oh shoot, I just forgot the name. Iron. It's the word for an iron in olden times. Flatiron building, I think, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a generic building, but it definitely recalls end of 19th century New York City, I'll say. And so what this book is about is very me. So basically, this woman is in upstate New York, and she has a very troubled family life. And we see her at the beginning just sort of wondering what else the world will hold for her. And then we launch into her career, in quotes, in New York City. And her career consists of leeching off other people in high society as she climbs her way up the ladder from country bumpkin that no one knows to figuring out how to infiltrate spaces, find couches to crash on, find lovers among the artists' circle. And then as she feels like she's like getting close to the end of that alliance, casting herself onto another raft. And then we meet the other two people in the trilogy that forms it's like it's what they call a lavender marriage. So our main character is lesbian in a time where this was not even spoken about. So we see at the end of the 19th century and then into the first 20 years or so of the 20th century. And her little Becky Sharp attitude climbing that social ladder is she's very deft, but then she comes to a point where like it doesn't work anymore. And then you see what happens. And I just loved how it was interlaced. And then you see like, oh, the heartbreak, and get to interpret your own ending almost. So very me novel. And you get lots of witty banter, you get lots of like cutting commentary, and lots of setting, just like interesting New York City details from like 1900. And yeah, I just really enjoyed Mutual Interest by Olivia Wolfgang Smith. So check that out. My second book. Yeah, these are all my notes when I talked to her about the stuff, and we had a really great discussion. So I was very specific about my questions. I think she'd still had most of them before because it was at the end of her book tour, but that's fine. Some of them got like a little bit of a tweaked answer. So I feel like it still had new things to offer. And that is in the chat. And then the third book for take a little break is a palate cleanser, because these were very serious, like long chunker books. And this is, as you can see, a mass market paperback that I just got for like a fun palate cleanser episode. This is a book by an author I had not read before, Sharon Shin. So apparently, wait, is she the one who lives in St. Louis? No, that's Ann Leckie. She lives in the Midwest. Okay, so it doesn't say where. But this is Still Life with Shapeshifter, which is part of a series called Shifting Circle, and it's about shapeshifters, which I don't think I had read anything of this specific subgenre, right? Like you get vampires, you get werewolves, but you don't get like the world in which shapeshifters are just like a subpopulation. Sub not meaning lower, but meaning like a smaller set than the general population, just so no one gets their neck in a kink here. Anyway, so fantasy shapeshifter, and I really enjoyed it. I whipped right through it in a day. And what did I like about this? So it is told in 2 points of view. Oh, and I didn't even mention that part. So we talked a bit about it in the interview, but mutual interests, one of the main first things you notice is that the point of view is like an omniscient narrator with a very not condescending, but like very nitpicky and saucy take on things. Let's just say that. And so I love that voice for like from time to time cutting in and telling you what was happening. But the points of view in Still Life with Shapeshifter are young woman who I really felt for, who I like at the beginning was just exhausted and worried about a family member, and trying to hold up her end at work, and alone in mid-career and just like not knowing what to do, right? So we see about her sister and what's happening with the shape-shifting, and then we see about her like enemy at the beginning and like what he really wants, and then just like the fears, and they sort of develop into something different, and the plot develops based on what we find out and the connections we make. And I just thought it was really good. We hear from this woman at the beginning, and then I felt it a bit abrupt with the change to the second point of view, because it was first person rather than third. And I was like, where are we in time relation to the first person? How are these going to connect? It does match up at the end, and you get it. But yeah, I definitely like the first storyline better. So it was one of those like, oh, you got to hang on and like see how it connects to see the payoff, which is fine. But yeah, fast read, great, fun resolution, great characters, cinnamon roll hero, just my kind of guy. And yeah, so fun. And if I saw something by her, I would definitely pick it up again. She seems fun. And yeah, well done. So what's this? Okay, so now I was going to take a little break and do my little banner switcher outer thing to remind you guys that Oh, well, okay, there's this. So if you're new here and you're drawn in by some of the titles that I'm reviewing, but don't know about my channel, I review practically everything. So lots of nonfiction, lots of climate focus and public policy, but also lots of historical fiction, especially the 19th century, because that's what I love to write, and also fantasy and mystery. So we focused on fantasy so far here today, but we're going to move into a nonfiction section in a second. Speaking of readathons, I did some very focused work yesterday and the day before trying to figure out how I was going to keep going with all the readathons that I'm a part of, and that is going to be featured on Sunday. So if you're trying to figure out books that will double dip for multiple things, like tune in on Sunday, because I think it's going to be, I'm hoping it's going to be like a group session where we all fling out suggestions and help each other, because yeah, yeah. We've got Herkyed, which is like going into Q4 of its like year-long majesticitude. And like I need to get going on some of those prompts. So there's Herkyed I'm going to be talking about, as well as Climathon. And then, of course, since it's March, we have Irish Readathon and Celtophile Readathon, which are going to be much more laid back, but they're going to influence my Herkyed and Climathon choices, perhaps. So tune in for that on Sunday. I found Leanne Rose's video to be the most helpful. I normally tune into Aoife at Words of Clover, but she didn't list all the past prompts. So if you are interested in participating in the Irish Readathon, Leanne Rose has all the past prompts for you to choose from for one of the prompts for this year. So I thought that was easy access. So thank you for that. And Nicole's announcement for Celtophile Readathon is here. And so if you're curious about that, it's even more low-key. It is like kind of like Irish Readathon. Read something with green, white, or orange on the cover. Read something by a native Celtic-born author. Read Celtic history. Read Celtic fantasy. But like, there's no awards or like teams or anything complicated. It's just like, read some of these and talk about it, because we love Celtic stuff. So obviously I'm in it for that. And what I thought my prompt would be is read about a historical figure, because I've got a Daniel O'Connell book that's like been calling my name. So we'll see about that. And yeah, so those are like readathon news and what I'll be talking about on Sunday, Friday, the productivity stream, and Thursday on Elaine's channel. So cool. And I think I sent all the links out that I needed to. Okay, so switch over to last final books. Which are in order of reading. We're going next. Book 4 is called The Great Disruption by Paul Gilding. This is a book I picked up used, and it's from like 2010 or 2011. I don't remember where I got it now. But I've been working on it for a while in little bits. It's been a read before I fall asleep book. And you might think that's weird because it's like public policy related, but the stuff he's talking about, he made it pretty accessible. But I think it was advantageous to only take a little bit at a time until the end when I was going through it a little faster. But basically, to give the lowdown, Paul Gilding is someone who is an Australian, ran Greenpeace Australia for a while, and then took a decade to like consult with major corporations about climate plans, etc. And then in 2010 ended that decade with like, no, I think this is what's going to happen. So I'm going to tell people, which is an interesting approach. Now, I'm going to talk about this book in more detail in a separate standalone book review, kind of like I did for I Want a Better Catastrophe. And I Want a Better Catastrophe, I feel like I agreed on a lot of the points and they were illuminating. The reason I'm going to do this one as a standalone is because I'm questioning the author's tone and intent. And so I want to get other people's viewpoints on this. Because, like I said, it's 15 years old. And his argument is that, okay, so we've been going about this appeal to folks to change their behaviors the wrong way. We've had significant obstacles. We are at this point running into climate catastrophe. And what's going to happen? How can we have hope in this situation? And his conclusion, based on his Greenpeace efforts, based on his consultations, based on being in the CEO world, is that we're going to have a great disruption. So kind of like in the catastrophe book, there's a White Rider Rapids coming, and we can either do stuff now to make it like, well, at least we can have an oar in our kayak to sort of push off of certain things, and like we'll lose some of the stuff in the kayak, but at least we won't completely crash. Versus having just a cliff where we just like fall to our deaths and society stops. So Paul Gilding's take on this is that it's going to be so starkly obvious to everybody that policy will have to change. Like, there's no other option. Like, you can't trust growth anymore. You can't have this relief valve of growth for the inequality that we experience. People are going to change their minds about things. They're not going to trust the palaver anymore. And this is 2010, 2011. So he may not have taken into account the Tea Party, the Occupy Wall Street effect, like what was going on then. But the fact that we're still in this, like, people denying climate change is real thing 15 years later is very discouraging, having read what he's talking about. So I'll get into my like specific thoughts and actually prepare for the standalone book review. And hopefully some of you will be interested enough in that to join me about the policy discussion for Climathon. But that is book 4, more to come. And then the final book, the one that I was reading 120 pages in one day to finish, is because it is a library book. So it's called It's Not Just You by Tori Tsui. Tsui. Tsai Tsui. And she's from Hong Kong, but currently lives in Britain. This is a much more recent book. It's about 1 year old? 2023. So like a year and change. And basically she wrote up until 2022. You could tell by her references. And I'm debating whether or not I want a standalone book review of this. I won't be able to hold it up and point to the different parts because I have to return it tomorrow to the interlibrary loan system, which there is no return or renewal. So that's why I had to finish this. But I will take pictures and definitely put it in my review on Storygraph. So she is a young climate activist and has been to various COP meetings, which are Conference of the Parties, which are the big climate meetings every 5 years or so that hit the news, maybe 2 years. And we only become aware of them if there are protests that disrupt them, or if there are like glaring ironies, like having them in a country that thrives on oil revenues. So she's been in the thick of it for several years, and she's protested, and she's been to these big meetings, done the research, collaborated with people. And what I was interested in her book for was that she's talking about the nexus of climate change and mental health. And I like the frame that she gives it, which is environmental health, which is a bit more inclusive and neutral than calling it mental illness or psychological terms that are illnesses or conditions or what have you. So she's talking mainly about using the term eco-anxiety. And, there's problems with this term. But she starts out the book with like, what is eco-anxiety? First of all, what is climate change? Second of all, how do they feedback loop to each other, which is interesting. And then she goes into an examination of sections where she breaks it up with the headlines, It's Not Just. I didn't think that that framing was very successful because of language, but that's fine. The points that she was making were important and were, like, well organized. So, the issues that I had with this and why it took me, like, pushing myself to read it and it wasn't that enjoyable was that, it reads like an academic text, and it reads like I mean, there's typos in here, there are, um, cliches in here, there's sort of language that's pushed in to make it sound more academic, which was off-putting, so I think it could have benefited from some more editing, um, but pushing that aside, like, she does have good organized points and theses, so I finished it, um, but just be aware that that's sort of an obstacle to get past. Um, so she comes to a really interesting conclusion, which is about collectivism and and how to act in community, which I really like, and which is why I think I got. Oh, and she doesn't have a table of contents. Yeah, she doesn't have a bibliography. She doesn't have a table of contents. But she does have a notes section where she cites her sources, which is good, and she does have a glossary. But a lot of these tabs are actually like bibliographic notes for me that I want to look up. Um, Essentially, she arrives at her points, her argued points, and her conclusions by talking to other climate activists, especially ones that she's interacted with in these youth activist circles, and a few that are older that I recognize from her reading, which is like Ayana Elizabeth. Ayana Eliza is her handle. Ayana Elizabeth. Why can't I remember her name? It's not Williams. That's her co-author. Johnson. Ayana Elizabeth Johnson, Rebecca Solnit, and a few others that are like normally recognizable. But mostly it's her fellow activists who are people of color. And so we're getting lots of different viewpoints, including this one that I have from the library from my own system, so I can renew it, Vanessa Nakate, A Bigger Picture. So I do like that we're getting lots of different perspectives. Oh, and the other formatting thing is that when she does extensive quotes, she doesn't set them aside. So they're in paragraph, which made it harder for me to read. Anyway, extensive quotes from fellow activists, and we get at inequality, we get at medical diagnoses. This is why I'm going to be taking pictures of these because they need some more time to digest. But things inherent in the capitalist system that are the reasons why it's so hard to fight against it. And I'll just highlight one of the quotes that I thought was a good concluding quote on page 263. Lena Kabad, who is a filmmaker and activist, helps me unpack this issue. Quote, people say, well, I don't want to be a hypocrite, but really you should ask yourself, why am I in this impossible situation? What is the alternative? Have we been given a choice? End quote. For the internal quote. Lena says, people soon realize it can be difficult to live separate from systems of extraction. It doesn't work as an argument to point out that people are part of a system they criticize when the system is by definition inescapable. This argument just exists as a loop that you're trapped in and you have nowhere to go. And so no change in society happens. I can imagine this narrative makes people feel very mentally unwell, yet it continues to be perpetuated by the system itself. End quote, like the actual quote. So there's a lot of great evidence in here, but I read it so quickly at the end that I didn't have time to unpack it to boil it down. I will just say the formatting and the language choices were an obstacle for me to enjoying it, but I see that there's good content in there and I want to retain that and push it out to people for Climathon. So you may be seeing this as like a little addition in the Great Disruption book, and I may just include it as like 2 climate books in depth for one. So we'll see how that goes. So catching up here and winding up my wrap up. Boop. I had one other sort of poll question I might do, but let's see. Eva says, so pretty. I think that's the Dark Mirror book. Elaine says, same time change here in Canada. The UK is 2 weeks later. Okay. Wish they would get rid of time change. Me too, sister. All right. So here's the link for my interview with Olivia that happened last week, which was really great, especially if you're into LGBTQ, diving into issues in the past that, are still relevant for today, and historical books because the historical setting was wonderfully intricate. This is for the Irish readathon that has all the prompts, and this is for the Celtophile readathon that has all the prompts. And co-hosts came after that, but we'll cover that in another video. Elaine says, I know how that goes with library books. Yeah, and what's weird is I've been constantly checking every few days which one has people waiting because it changes, because there's more than one copy of a book, and someone may return a different copy and that person's hold is satisfied. So then I don't have to read it. I don't have to prioritize it. So it's constantly affecting my prioritization system, which is not optimal. But hopefully, what's the next one I'm reading? 10,000 Stitches. This is also due back tomorrow. So we'll see if I can read this in a day. I doubt it. I'll just have to get in line on the hold again. Because that's a Herculean book for Spiffbo non-finalists, if anyone else is watching. I mean, I've read Olivia Atwater before, and I know I like her style. She's been on the channel. So there you go. Emma's here to say ciao. Hello, hello. And Eva says, great reviews. Thank you. So lots of climate, lots of fantasy. Maybe you'll see some mystery next time. I tend to sort of swing back and forth for my palette cleansers. Oh, and the other thing that's starting in March. So we've got Irish, we've got Celtophile, which are sort of intertwined. But the third one I'm going to be participating on is more than 1 month, and it's called How to Do Nothing. Because this book that I've already read and I had on my reread short stack is How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell. And I think it's Cooks and Books who is hosting a 5-month readathon-ish about this book, and sort of rereading and interpreting and thinking about how we can change things in our lives based on it. It's not a self-help book per se. It's kind of like a capitalism deconstruction book. It's subtitled Resisting the Attention Economy. So I feel like it's relevant to Climathon as well, because capitalism is about colonizing your mind and start trying to make you want things you don't need. And Jenny Odell sort of went down this rabbit hole of what if I tried to do nothing and be content, and various iterations and venues. But she's got cultural stuff that she reflects on as well as personal things. And so it's really interesting. And I liked it when I read it first. And I felt like I didn't get it all. So I think it's been on my reread stack. And then to have another Booktube channel go, I'm going to do a readathon based on this, a slow read, and I'm going to enact change in my life. And I was like, okay, yes, let's do this. So I jumped into that one as well. And March is just the introduction. So focusing on the introduction. So very slow roll. I can get behind that. So that is it for today. I'll just say we have a final Friday productivity stream. So put that on your calendar. Final Friday, first Friday. That's when I do productivity streams. It's really the only time. I depend on others to jump in and chat when I'm, feeling the vibe. But if you want to see one hosted by me, that is your chance. And other than that, we're all set. Remember to diversify that reading shelf. And thanks everyone for coming to watch and listening to the reviews. Hopefully you found something you might want to read. But if you didn't add to your TBR stack, then we just had some fun together, which is okay. All right, everyone. Happy reading and take care. Bye.